We all know Scar as the villain who betrayed his brother and took over the Pride Lands. But have you ever wondered what truly drove him to do it? Was Scar always this bitter, or did something deeper push him to do such horrible things? What if I told you the story of Scar's betrayal didn't start with jealousy over Mufasa, but with their father, Ahadi? Ahadi made a decision long before Scar and Mufasa ever faced off, a choice that would change the course of both their lives forever. Could it be that the real reason for Scar's bitterness was not just sibling rivalry, but his father's hidden fear? And what if that fear wasn't about who was the better leader, but about something much darker, something buried deep in their family's past, what led to their toxic relationship? Get ready to dive into Ahadi's surprising past, Scar's transformation, and the moment everything changed. You might never see the Lion King the same way again. Before we get into Scar's betrayal, let's go back to the beginning, to Ahadi, the father of Mufasa and Scar. Most of us think of Ahadi as a wise and respected king, but what if there was more to his story? Imagine a younger Ahadi, faced with challenges that forced him to make harsh decisions to secure his throne. He had to be ruthless to survive, but he kept this side of himself hidden from the Pride Lands. But Scar, back then known as Taka, found out. Maybe he overheard whispers or witnessed something firsthand. When he realized that his father had been cruel and unforgiving in his younger years, it changed everything for him. He began to see power differently, not as something given, but as something you have to take. Because of this discovery, Scar felt that he also needed to embrace this darker side if he was ever going to rule. But his father wasn't going to help him. Ahadi was determined to make sure the next king would rule without violence, and was good for the Pride Lands. Therefore, Scar's journey into bitterness had already begun. But there was something about Scar that scared Ahadi even more. Scar was clever, quick, and always one step ahead, but in ways that Ahadi couldn't trust. He knew what power could do to someone because he experienced it himself. Ahadi was afraid that Scar might get the same cruel side he had tried to hide. Because of this, Ahadi made the decision to focus all his energy on Mufasa, who was noble and strong, the safer son. But Scar could sense this favoritism from an early age. Before Scar became the villain we know in The Lion King, he was called Taka, a name we learn about in the first book of the Lion King series, 6 New Adventures. This book gives us more insight into Ahadi, Scar's father, who never appeared in the movie. But what's even more revealing is the meaning of Taka's name. In Swahili, Taka can mean both dirt and want, adding a whole new layer to his story. This is no coincidence. It's a reflection of how Scar was seen in his family. While Mufasa's name means king or ruler, symbolizing his destiny as the chosen one, Taka's name suggests someone who is lesser, someone who craves something he cannot have. This cultural detail sheds light on how Scar's identity was shaped from the very beginning. He wasn't just living in Mufasa's shadow, he was marked as the one who would always be left wanting, never fully accepted by his father, Ahadi, or the Pride Lands. Therefore, Scar's resentment began to grow, not just towards Mufasa, but toward his father as well. But then came the moment that changed everything. According to the book, Ahadi wanted to take his sons hunting, but then something came in between and Ahadi canceled, because he had to take care of his kingdom. But Scar, back then still Taka, suggested that he and Mufasa should go together. Rafiki, who overheard Taka talking to Mufasa, didn't trust it and secretly followed them. But as Rafiki suspected, Taka trapped Mufasa. He led Mufasa to a small pool of water with a herd of buffalo. At the moment they approached, Taka secretly hid himself, and Mufasa approached the buffalo alone, asking if he could share his water with the rest of the Pride Landers until it rained again. At that moment, Taka approached the buffalo and told him to share his water or face Mufasa in combat. The buffalo got angry and flew at Mufasa. Then Rafiki showed himself and told Mufasa to run as hard as he could. Mufasa took Rafiki on his back and carried them to safety. When he went back to look for Taka, he found his brother severely injured, and according to the book, This was the moment Taka got his iconic scar across his face. At the moment Mufasa got back, Ahadi also arrived at the scene and took his sons back to the Pride Rock. Once Taka was healed, Mufasa asked his brother why he would make the buffalo mad, and he admitted that he had wanted to embarrass Mufasa and get even with Ahadi for breaking his promise to take them hunting. Then Ahadi came and reminded Taka that instead of hurting his family, he had nearly gotten himself killed. He told him that the scar he had earned would serve as a reminder of his recklessness. And from that moment, Taka got his new name, Scar. Because of this, Scar's personality shifted. He stopped caring about winning his father's approval and began focusing on how to take power for himself. Therefore, the cunning, manipulative side of Scar started to surface, and he began plotting, slowly but surely. Scar even turned to dark magic, something Ahadi never imagined possible. In The Lion Guard, we see how Scar uses flames to communicate with the hyenas, crossing a line that no other lion would even consider. This showed that Scar was willing to explore forces far beyond the natural order, just to prove that he had power too. Therefore, Scar's need for revenge wasn't just about gaining the throne. It was about reclaiming what he felt had been stolen from him all along, recognition. As Mufasa grew, Ahadi's favoritism became more obvious. Mufasa was the pride of the Pride Lands, the son destined to take over the throne. Because Mufasa was reliable, fair, and powerful, Ahadi poured everything into preparing him for leadership. But as Ahadi trained Mufasa to be king, he ignored Scar's potential entirely. Because of this, the gap between Scar and Mufasa got even bigger. Scar didn't just envy his brother's future. He hated what Mufasa represented. Mufasa was the golden child, loved by their father, while Scar was pushed into the shadows. Therefore, Scar's plotting wasn't just about stealing the throne. It was about destroying the image of perfection that Mufasa had gotten. But it wasn't just Scar's actions that led to tragedy. It was Ahadi's choice to cast him aside that set everything in motion. In the end, Ahadi's fear and favoritism led to one final decision that would seal Scar's fate. Mufasa was chosen to be king, not just because he was the older one, but because Ahadi believed Mufasa was the only one who could rule without giving in to darkness. Scar was seen as a risk, a potential danger, and Ahadi couldn't take that chance and completely abandoned Scar, which would have left him with a big childhood trauma. Because of this, Scar's jealousy was bigger than ever. He wasn't just angry that Mufasa would be king. He was angry that his father had never believed in him. Therefore, Scar's plan wasn't just about taking the throne. It was about tearing down everything his father and brother stood for, what we see back in the movie. In the end, the toxic relationship between Scar, Mufasa, and their father, Ahadi, is the underlying reason for all the bad things that happened in The Lion King. Ahadi's fear of Scar's potential, his decision to favor Mufasa, and Scar's ultimate rejection shaped the entire Pride Lands. Because of this, Scar wasn't just a villain. He was a lion shaped by years of neglect, betrayal, and a desperate need for recognition. Just like Mufasa couldn't wait to be king, I can't wait to see what you think of this theory. So be sure to hit that like button and give the notification bell a good old roar, so you'll always be first in line for the next adventure in the Pride Lands. See you in the next one. Next.